The Secrets of Technology is brought to you by the StarQuest Production Network and is made possible by our many generous patrons. If you'd like to support the podcast, please visit sqpn.com/give. You're listening to The Secrets of Technology. Hi, I'm Dom Bettinelli, and you're listening to The Secrets of Technology, where we discuss the technology news that's important to you from a uniquely Catholic point of view. And joining me today on the panel are Father Cory Sticha. Hey, Father Cory.
How's it going, Dom?
And Victor Lambs. Hey, Victor.
Hi, Dom.
And welcome to our special guest, Matthew Clark. Hey, Matthew.
Hello.
So before we get to why Matthew is joining us in just a second, I want to tell you about another show on the StarQuest Network you are sure to enjoy called The Secrets of Movies and TV Shows. You can find that wherever fine podcasts are found or at sqpn.com/secrets. So I wanted to welcome Matthew. Matt is a listener, Secrets of Tech, and he's a member of the StarQuest Discord community at sqpn.com/discord. Mm-hmm. And he's been a good contributor to our channel, Secrets of Technology channel there, whenever we have a show. And Matt would share his perspective as a farmer and the technology that he uses. And it's fascinating. Mm-hmm. I've loved all his contributions, and I love to learn about how important jobs that people do that are kind of regular jobs that lots of people do, but I don't know anything about the background. Like, my brother's a truck driver, and I'm always fascinated by his job as a truck driver and the technology he uses and that sort of thing. And so I'm fascinated by Matt's, what he shared about being a farmer. So I said we should definitely get him on. Of course, we had to wait till the off season when the man isn't out in the fields, busy. And so this has been a great opportunity to have him here. So again, welcome, Matt. And could you tell us a little bit about yourself and your farm?
I farm with my brother and one hired man in northern Missouri. Have a bachelor's in science from the University of Missouri. I've farmed for about 25 years, and it's not a big farm, not a small farm. It's pretty average size for our area. And we have corn, beans, and raise 250 to 300 head of cattle.
Okay. Was this a family thing? I mean, is this something that the family did? Okay.
I'm third generation.
Awesome. Oh, excellent. Awesome. And could you tell us a little bit about this is a very Catholic question, but the vocation of a farmer and what it might mean to you to be a farmer?
That's a tough question. I've been asked that recently several times, actually. And farming is, that's what I do, but what I am as a farmer. I've spent my entire life working on this farm. I live a half mile from where I grew up, and it's just who I am.
Okay. It's not surprising that you would say that, just because there are. If there's a more fundamental profession than farming, I don't know what there is. Mm-hmm. After parenthood, which is our a primary vocation, or religious life, mm-hmm. or the priesthood. But to be a farmer, is to be in a line that goes back to the very beginning. So I can see where it would be difficult to express. What does that even mean in a larger sense? So I appreciate that.
Well, it's one of those things too. Of course, I live in a farming community. My family were farmers before I was born, and I've been around farming and ranching most of my life, not participating in it, but around farmers and ranchers. And it's one of those jobs that it's not an 8 to 5 job by any stretch of the imagination. You'll have busy seasons where you're going from as soon as the sun starts, the twilight is starting on the corner of the sky till the twilight is finished at night. Then there's times like now where you really don't have much. You've got your preparation for the next planting, or whatever.
Yeah, we've been taking care of cattle, working on equipment, and hauling grain.
Yeah,
mm-hmm.
That's awesome. And so, this is Secrets of Tech, and so we want to, talk about the tech you use in agriculture and farming. Can you tell us about, just start with, what is the most vital piece of technology to help you do what you do?
As funny as this sounds, our smartphone.
Mm-hmm.
Whenever I graduated from college 25 years ago, and I had a cell phone that occasionally got reception. You couldn't destroy it, but it didn't always work. And as that's progressed, it's improved it a lot. But whenever I'm doing my job, we're out in the middle of nowhere. Sometimes a person can't even see me from the road. A lot of times they can, but so I'm out in the middle of nowhere. I know I share my location with my family. So if something happens, so from a safety standpoint, I'm not going to be leaving the house after lunch and be gone for 8 hours without anybody knowing where I'm at. I still tell people, well, I'm going to this spot or this spot, but things change. Things happen. Sometimes you move and you don't get anybody told. So if for some reason I didn't show up on time, somebody can, find my phone and be like, oh,
right,
he's over here. So with that, also, back in the 90s, whenever I was still in high school, I remember Dad subscribing to a satellite service to get markets, weather, ag news, all this stuff. I mean, you would get it on terrestrial radio, but, get your once an hour. But for 15 years or more, we had a corner in the office at their house that had a box with a old monitor on it just for the markets and for ag news and stuff like that. So we could get timely information. And I remember whenever I finally called and canceled that, and they're like, well, why are you canceling it? I said, I can get everything for free. This was, 2010 or 11, something like that.
Yeah.
Like, I can get everything for free on my phone. All the information's there. It's timely. And before that, we had some businessman radios and stuff like that. So you could talk to the base stations. But I remember either being at home or hearing on the radio whenever I was out working, and Dad would holler at Mom and say, hey, go check the markets. She would check them, tell him, and he'd be like, okay, get so-and-so grain buyer on the phone. And she would have the base station for the FM radios in one hand and the phone in the other, relaying message between the grain buyer and Dad, so that, he could do that. I can do all that with my phone.
Right. That the ubiquity of communication and being in contact everywhere. I mean, that's really been one of the biggest changes in technology. And I think we're not done with that. I mean, even now there are dead zones and that sort of stuff in the rural areas. We're not done.
There are plenty.
Yeah, exactly. And I don't think we're done with that. I mean, the latest advances, like with Apple's iPhone and the satellite emergency thing, I think it's a harbinger of what's to come with that ubiquity of being in touch and being in contact.
Well, I ran into that the other day. There's known dead zones, and I happen to be in one. And I looked down at my phone, and I'd lost my podcast or book or whatever I was streaming. And my phone said SOS up in the corner. And I was like, oh, well, apparently that's going now.
Yeah. Right. I think, something, there's when it says SOS, that's like, you could dial 911. I think, is that what that means?
I think so. I think that's what it is, but
like the most basic service, or it might be an acronym for something else, and which would be a bad idea to make it the same as SOS. But
if it's like on Android, it probably does. Android will say emergency dialing only, same kind of thing,
Yeah.
I just restarted it and said, hey, maybe you'll pick up a tower now.
Right.
hold it over your head and hope for the
Yeah,
best.
I was gonna say anybody who lives in rural areas knows like you're holding it up as high as you can to try to get that last little sniff of tower reception.
Yeah, I mean, even around here in the Boston area, I do scouting with my kids, and there's some scout camps that are, dead zones. Well, dead zones for my service. Verizon apparently can get it wherever they want. And I'm standing, climbing a tree to try to get a bar. So,
I'm hands free most of the time, almost all the time with my phone. So I find a spot if I'm in the shop or wherever that it's like, oh, it's happy here. We'll just leave it here and
Oh, there you go.
Bluetooth to it.
Right. So, do you guys have any questions for Matt that you wanted to ask?
Actually, on that subject, have you played around with any of those like kind of mesh network technologies? I know it would probably just be for local communications where, anything within a, Bluetooth range or Wi-Fi range or within range of a repeater, smart devices can text and stuff.
No, not really. No, we just rely on our phones and texting. My brother and I, of course, grew up together, and our hired man, he's been working for us over 15 years now. Some days we don't even talk to each other. So we might be in the same field, but we know what everybody's supposed to do and well-oiled machine at this point.
I think a lot of people listening would be surprised by how the actual technology within your equipment, the tractors, the combines, and things like that, how that's changed. Can I talk a little bit about that?
Okay. Yeah. I've been farming full time for 25 years. The first time I planted a field, I was 13 or 14. I started on an open station tractor with no monitor on the planter, anything. Go out there with an arm on the planter that goes down and makes a mark, and you follow that mark all day long. And as it's gone along, the monitors and stuff on the planters that tells you if seed's dropping, how much seed, those have improved just steadily. But once we got probably really, it became affordable and reliable enough probably 15 years ago with auto steer and now GPS controlled seeding rates and variable rates and stuff like that. It's night and day, really. In my career, it's changed so much because so I go out, I reach up, I touch my controller for the tractor, tell it what kind of line I want to draw. The tractor's GPS knows exactly where it's at. I push start, I drive the tractor through the field one time, hit end on my line. While I'm turning around, it will render the next line that you'll go on. You reach down, you push the resume button, put your equipment in the ground, and until you get to the other end of the field, you're going with the plant. You're looking at the planter, you're looking at your equipment, you're checking gauges, you're checking monitors, making sure everything's going. And on the planter side of it, the monitors have gotten so much better. Well, it's not it's not even a monitor anymore. It's a controller for the planter. The planter that I have, this will be my second year. I actually, thank you, chip shortage and all other shortages. I had ordered it a year before I actually got it. It took over 12 months to build. Wow. But the screen that I have, which I've shared pictures of on Discord in there for the planter, it's running off of GPS too. There is absolutely no ground drive contact with the planter. The planter is all electric. It can vary rates from row to row if you want it to. So as you go through the field, you have to be moving, I think, 2.5 miles an hour for it to pick up speed. And it just, whenever it paints lines, whenever it gets past the painted line, GPS line, it starts planning. You pull into point rows, end rows, no matter the angle, it'll shut off rows one at a time as you, or however you have that set up, but one at a time as it goes across the planter. And you lift up, you turn around, push your resume button on the tractor, put the planter back in, and as you drive back into the unplanted stuff, it starts planting again.
Yeah.
It sounds like autopilot, in many ways.
Yeah.
How long before this is fully automated, do you think? Or at least remote control, you sit in your easy chair at home, remote controlling it in whatever field it's in.
Or a command center, right, with all the monitors up.
Yeah.
Some of that sooner than you think, probably. Some of it maybe not as soon as you think. John Deere last year, John Deere has gone to releasing all their new electronics, robotic stuff at the Consumer Electronics Show in Vegas. They've done this 2-3 years now. Farmers don't get to see it first anymore.
Right.
And last year they introduced their autonomous tractor. It's out there. I'm not sure you can buy it yet. But there has been. I've watched videos of it running, and they have it running in square fields with no obstacles.
Sure.
Mm-hmm.
They've thrown obstacles out in front of it, and the thing stops fast enough that if a person was in it, you would be thrown through the windshield.
Right.
But it's coming. It's coming. I personally don't know by the time the robotics and stuff like that gets here if it will necessarily look like, what you think a John Deere or Case IH or New Holland tractor looks like out in the field. I really think that we might be going back towards smaller equipment and swarm robotics. I think maybe as the University of Michigan had done some stuff doing for planting. There's a company called Fint. I know they are working on different robotics for planting and stuff like that.
Mm.
Oh, wow.
Yeah, I was remembering the movie Interstellar. I don't know if you've seen it, where the first part of it, he's got the robotic tractors and combines, which are basically just regular tractors and combines that they pretend are robotic. So they don't look all that fantastic. But then you have all the way to Star Trek, where they're looking 400 years in the future and imagining, hovering robotic vineyard pruning machines and that sort of thing. But, I've seen a lot of these things like laser weeders and like this, all of these ideas for how to improve the farming. How do you feel about the increasing technology and the fact that, you're able to do much more with fewer people? Is that a benefit? Is it bad to remove the man from the system?
Some of that's chicken and egg. Are we getting some of this stuff because we don't have the people, which we don't? Or are people going away because we're getting this stuff? It's a little bit. At the end of the day, there's always going to be somebody out here farming. I don't worry too much about my job going away because while operating equipment and driving tractors is what gets every little kid to want to come and farm. My job's growing commodities, or raising cattle, and that's not going to go away. How I do it probably will change, but from me to back to dad, it changed. From dad back to grandpa, it changed. From grandpa to, it's always changing. The American farmer can raise so many more crops now than we could even 50 years ago. So we're still here, even though we have increased production with fewer inputs. Everybody needs food and crops.
Yeah.
People got to eat.
Yeah. Well, I'm sure in your area is a lot like up here, up in North Dakota, Montana, where I'm from, where there's a lot of old farmsteads, a lot of old homesteads that, people sold out and moved away, and more smaller number of farmers were able to do a lot more land because of the newer equipment, the bigger tractors, and then, and so on and so on. So that's probably still going to be a trend for quite a while, I'm sure.
Oh, it is. It's really hard to say. I mean, where does it end? I don't know. Farms tend to get bigger as equipment gets bigger, and it's economies of scale. What I'm looking for. And whenever you're raising a commodity, economies of scale. work well.
Sure. Yeah. Now, are there any older equipment that you use, any older tech that you still kind of find yourself using on a regular basis?
Oh yeah, we've got a couple of older tractors that we use every day for things that don't need all the electronics and stuff on it. You have to grind feed, you have to feed hay. And mowing and baling, there's not as much. You're not planting or harvesting anything, so whenever you're making hay, you don't necessarily use as much technology. Although I use auto steer for anything I can. It's just so much easier on me. But oh yeah, there's plenty of older stuff. It's not just all new and fancy. We use it all. I don't have a tractor without a cab on it anymore.
Oh, you don't have one of the old.
I mean, I have a couple of 40-year-old tractors, but they have cabs on it. I don't like to be cold or hot.
I would say no seat with an umbrella was all the creature comforts you had.
No, I put plenty of hours on those whenever I was a kid.
Yep.
Here's a water jug. Go over there and work. Okay.
Those are fun to see when they show up in the rebuilt in the city parade or something like that. But I can't imagine they were much fun to drive.
Right.
We didn't have anything else, or there are not as many cab tractors. And when you're 12, 13, 14, and you're out on a little 50-horse tractor raking hay, you think you're one of the guys. So
there you go.
One of the big controversies that has kind of spread out beyond the farming community into the general consciousness has been the problem of right to repair. And this goes across industries and technologies. But one of the big ones that I've noticed from the agricultural industry is this John Deere problem. Could you tell us a little bit about what the issue is with right to repair? And John Deere is the big name, but probably goes with other businesses as well. What's going on with that?
Yeah, I suspect most companies are this way, but they're very protective of their hardware and firmware and software. Deere has been at the point of this. They have been the ones out there taking the arrows. They until yesterday, I think.
Yeah.
Yep.
They said, the electronics on our stuff has to be serviced and maintained by a technician from one of our stores. They wouldn't let you have, the modern tractors, you've got half a dozen, maybe more controllers on it. ECU, PCU, HCU, all the components have a controller. So I've personally had trouble. I've personally popped a ECU on one of my tractors, and it took me and the tech like a week to diagnose and finally figure out that, it really is the ECU. And then once we got that, a bug had creeped up in John Deere's service software, and it wouldn't flash the new program to the ECU because the ECUs come blank. You put them on a tractor. They're the same thing across all tractors, all combines and stuff. And then they have to plug in their laptop and flash the specific program for the size tractor that you have and the year. And so then we were down a day or two, and he had to make a few extra trips. If they let their diagnostic and repair software out there so people can at the very least diagnose what's wrong, then I think that's going to be a good thing. I mean, there's nothing wrong with that at all. On another hand, if I do have another ECU go down or some major controller like that, it would please me greatly to be able to diagnose it and tell them, hey, here's what you need to bring. The ECUs and stuff the controllers are not cheap. And if for some reason that's not the problem, I go out and buy one, I open it, I can't return it. Yeah. So, you're talking about maybe a $5,000 component that didn't fix your problem. The tech comes out and fixes it, and he's like, well, that didn't fix your problem. What the heck are we going to do now? And move on. So there's both sides of it.
Yeah, it seems like there was a agreement between John Deere and, as we record this, and the American Farm Bureau Federation a couple days ago, saying that it's a memorandum of understanding, which means basically it's worth the paper it's written on. But that farmers will be allowed to buy the diagnostic tools and manuals they need to make their own repairs, which, being allowed to buy it is not the same thing as being able to afford it. I mean, this could be a significant amount of money that they charge for this. There's no saying. So it seems like a step in the right direction, but I don't know if it's the solution yet.
I don't know. Like you said, this doesn't have any teeth. Getting the equipment and diagnostic equipment into the hands of people that can do this is a good thing. It's not going to be for everybody. I mean, not everybody fixes their own phone.
Right.
So, but it needs to be out there because they are strong arming and do kind of have a monopoly on that right now.
Okay.
Well, it's gonna be interesting to see too how it goes with Deere, because as you said, Deere's kind of in the leading edge on this as far as taking the slings and arrows, but all your audio manufacturers are doing the same thing. As you mentioned, phones, Apple and Samsung and Google and all these other, they're all doing this as well. They're all fighting against right to repair legislation and everything because, it is, and they would say, of course, they want to maintain their equipment the way it's supposed to be and not have people poking around where they shouldn't be. But at the same time, it's also, they're allowed to make more money off of it that way.
Right.
Well, and if you're buying brand new equipment or equipment with low enough hours that has a warranty left on it, so the difference between 8R260 or whatever one of the smaller ones is and an 8R410, there are some component differences, but the biggest difference between in one line, in the 8R line of tractors from Deere, the main difference is the sticker and the tune. The bigger ones might have a bigger engine in them or something like that, but you give us a way to turn the wick up a little bit, we're probably going to turn the wick up on it.
Right. That's interesting. That would be a concern. Yeah. Farmers are known for making do and innovating with what they've got. So I can imagine.
Oh yeah.
Yeah. So I remember the limited time that I spent on farms when I was a kid. There are lots of dogs on farms, and they serve lots of different purposes. Hunting critters and varmints, and security and helping with the animals, all sorts of things. So do you ever think we'll see a replacement for all of the functions, a technological replacement for all the functions that a dog serves on a farm?
Yeah, yes, 40 years ago, no, probably never. I mean, for the most part, they're pets. We have some dogs. My brother has some dogs that, kind of roam around between all of our places and stuff and, run off the undesirable animals. And as far as working dogs go, like cattle dogs and stuff like that, there's always going to be a niche for working animals. Especially you get in, mountain country or inaccessible places, there's always going to be something. Every farm having a dog that's not just a pet, they're pets.
I do have to laugh, going to a farm and, they don't have to see you coming. The doorbell goes off. Ruff. Somebody's here.
We've had cars and motorcycles and whatnot for 70, 80, 100 years now, I guess, 100 years. We still, and a lot of ranchers still ride horses to, to take care of their animals. So, there's still I don't know if those, was it the Boston Dynamics Robo-Dogs will ever replace a farm dog for that sort of stuff, but
probably not.
Probably not.
I'm going to go with no on that one. That thing's a little creepy.
It's got a laser turret mounted on it to shoot the rats. So there's so much more we could ask you about. So much more conversation we could have, but this is about all the time we have. Matt, can we sometime have you back for a part 2 of a conversation?
Yeah, probably so.
That would be great. I really appreciate you coming and
fun.
Talking a little bit about farming and farming tech. It's a great opportunity to understand a very important profession, and in areas that a lot of us maybe don't know enough about. So I really do appreciate you coming and joining us for this.
Oh, you're welcome. You're welcome. I enjoyed it.
Okay, we'd like to take a moment to thank our patrons who make it possible for us to create the secrets of technology, including Sedani, Susan L., Leslie H., John and Greta C., and John S. Their generous donations at sqpn.com/give make it possible for us to continue the secrets of technology and all the shows at StarQuest. And you can join them by visiting sqpn.com/give. This StarQuest show is brought to you by Tim Shevlin's Personal Fitness Training for Catholics, providing spiritual and physical wellness through personalized nutrition, workout and prayer programs, and daily accountability check-ins. Learn more by visiting fitcatholics.com. So I want to move on to our headlines for this week. The first headline, this is one for you, Father Cory.
Yeah, I saw
as
that.
our resident Starlink user. Starlink is getting daytime data caps. In fact, by the time this article came out a while ago, and it was due to go into effect at the end of December. Have you seen this go into effect, Father?
It has. Actually, as we're sitting here talking, I'm trying to find my my stats, but yeah, and what it is it's during certain hours during the day. Was it like 6 a.m. to 10 or something like that?
7 to 11,
something
I think
like
it is. Yeah.
7 to 11. Okay, I was close. And it's a terabyte over a month just during those days. So if you remember back when there was like evenings and weekends,
Yes.
it's kind of like that, for your cell phone.
Yeah.
But yeah, I've not had any problem with it because last time I looked, I was usually seeing about 250 to 300 gigabytes during the day. So it wasn't a big issue, and it's not a data cap insofar they shut you down. What it is they reserve the right to restrict your speed to kind of throttle your speed.
Right.
So it doesn't even mean if you go over that 1 terabyte, you might not see any restriction.
Okay.
It's just if it says if there's heavy network congestion, if there's some if your particular cell, your particular area is full, then you might get restricted.
Okay.
But again, it's a might. It doesn't say that there's necessarily will.
A terabyte is a lot of data. I'm just looking up mine. I do, like last week, I downloaded 486 gigabytes of data and uploaded 191. And keep in mind, I'm doing this nearly every day. I'm doing streaming,
same here. Big
files up and down, that sort of stuff. And plus 6 other people live in my house, accessing the internet. So I'd be considered a heavy user, and I'm not hitting a terabyte. And that's 24 hours. That's not just during that 7 to 11. So
yeah, I mean, it says a terabyte per month. So
that's during the day. Yeah. That's not.
Okay.
Yeah.
That's not all time. There we go. I finally got logged in here. See if I can find the spot here. Because there's a place on the, there we go. There's a place. Okay. So yeah, I'm just about actually to rotate over. The 13th will be my rotate day. And I have used 317 gigabytes of data in the last month. And again, I'm doing this with Dom, every week, and that's during the daytime usage. Every week we're doing Secrets of Star Trek, Secrets of Doctor Who. I'm doing, Secrets of Stargate, So I'm not maybe like the super heaviest user, but even still I use quite a bit. And I'm always watching YouTube. I'm always doing, things like that.
Right.
So it's not a big deal. This is really what this is trying to do, from what I understand, is kind of in reading some of the Starlink forums and stuff like that. It's the people who are doing like network connection sharing, where there'd be like 3 houses with Wi-Fi links all connected to one Starlink.
Right.
It's stuff like that they're trying to kind of cut back on.
Well, it seems to me that Starlink has maybe bit off more than it can chew right now. That it hasn't been able to grow the amount of bandwidth it can serve as fast as they pulled in customers, based on this article that we'll have a link to from The Verge, that they're having some trouble in certain places where there's a lot of people on because each satellite you get satellite down individually, but to send data up, it goes to a central location. Is that what it is?
So Yeah, so what it does is all Starlink does is it bounces from your dish, from Dishy. They call it a Dishy McDish face. That's actually the name of it. From the dish up to the satellite, low Earth orbit satellite, and then back down to a ground station somewhere close, quote unquote. There's actually one that's about 100 miles north of here, and there's another one that's about 150 miles south of here. But that's, within the satellite's range. And then it goes from there out onto fiber optic and out onto the internet.
Right. And that's where the congestion is at those base stations. Yep. Right.
Well, and the satellites themselves too. There's only so many connections the satellites themselves too can do.
That's right.
And it is a direct shot, but it's still, there's only limits to what they can do. So.
Right.
Do they do a lot of satellite to satellite communications?
That is supposed to be version 2 of the satellites, which they can't launch yet because they haven't gotten their Starship or whatever they call it, the new rocket done. Because the new satellites are supposed. I've been following this because I rely on Starlink, and I'm very, despite some the occasional glitches and occasional freezes or whatever that we'll have, it's been a very reliable, very good internet service for me. So I've been following it. And the second generation of satellites are much bigger and much heavier. So Falcon 9 can't launch as many of them as this new rocket will be able to.
Oh, okay. Yeah, and they're not in the Northeast at all yet because we're too heavily congested. There's no way they could handle even the small percentage of users that would jump on.
Plus, you've got coverage,
You throw a rock, you'll hit 5 ISPs within your radius of your house. So,
right. Right, exactly. One of the interesting things that the story says is that, so they call it priority access. That's the regular full speed service. And then you could get knocked down to basic access, which is slower or less bandwidth. But they said that the RV and portability satellite connections are always they can't get priority access. They're always basic access. So that's interesting. So you could get there's a special Starlink dish that you could put on an RV, but you're not going to get high speed on that. Same thing.
You will unless you're area that's restricted.
Oh, okay. So it's
that's the priority access says I'm always going to get what the most capability I can.
Right.
Until I hit that 1 terabyte for daytime usage. Then if my area gets loaded up, then I lose that top access.
Okay. So even if you're basic access, if you're in an area without a lot of congestion, you'll get high speed. I see.
That's as I understand it. Again, I haven't even come close to touching that since they implemented it. So
right. And then if you have the yacht one, I guess you always get high speed because
No. Well, they're also looking at airplane. They want to replace Go Flight or whatever the airline internet services, stuff like that. Yeah, they're dreaming big.
Yeah. I mean, it's growing pains. That's the thing. And you mentioned that you've been having some issues apart from the speed issue, just having some connectivity issues. All kind of some growing pains having to do with this new service.
And it's widespread. There's this past week there was some really nasty outages, and that was pretty much across a region across the western United States. So
yeah. Okay. So Bear's looking at, I mean, it's interesting. This is, like we were just talking about before with Matt, it was the idea of ubiquitous communications, getting this, being able to get online anywhere, everywhere, at any moment is a kind of a fascinating idea. I mean, it's the Star Trek promise. And you pull out the Captain Kirk's communicator and talk to Scotty wherever you are.
And yet when people set up their own mesh network or whatever in the mountains of Utah, everybody throws a big fit.
We are going to talk about we're going to talk about that in an upcoming episode. I have already planned this one, but yeah, there's an interesting story about these mysterious antennas repeater stations being built on tops of mountains in Colorado that no one seems to know who put them there. And they're on tops of mountains. Like, they're not easy to get at. And as soon as they pull one down, another one goes up. It's a very mysterious thing. So we'll be to that. That's a teaser for a future episode. So let's move on to our next headline, though, which is it's sort of a couple of headlines together. The first one, Seattle Public Schools have sued TikTok, YouTube, Instagram, Facebook, seeking compensation for youth mental health crisis. And there's another headline, Fortnite maker sued by parents saying kids are addicted to the games. This seems to be a new trend, which is these, institutions want to, or parents or people want to hold these companies accountable for making addictive products. What do you think, as Victor, as a parent, Father Cory, as a pastor?
I think if the Seattle Public Schools wants to address a youth mental health crisis, they should look at the beam in their own eye rather than the motes in everybody else's eye. No, I mean, I can understand parents like being upset and lashing out and trying to sue, the maker of Fortnite or whatever. Maybe there's standing there, maybe there's not. I mean, it comes down to, if you don't want your kid to play Fortnite, don't let them play Fortnite. I mean, you have to be a parent, but I understand it's hard. It is very, very hard to monitor what your kids are doing. And especially as they get larger physically, it becomes even more difficult to kind of rein them in. No, but I mean, I don't like a public school district, like going after TikTok and Facebook. I mean, they're not the parents of these kids and, aren't
right.
Yeah. And it feels weird that they would say, you're damaging the kids, therefore give us money.
There's a history here with Seattle Public Schools where they getting involved in these lawsuits. They also sued Juul, who makes e-cigarettes, and they sued YouTube or filed a friend of the court brief in another case of someone suing the family of an American citizen killed in an ISIS attack, suing YouTube for allowing ISIS to be on YouTube. And I'm like, this sounds like this is a school district who's got more than educating students on its agenda. It seems kind of fishy.
Yeah, I'm not comfortable with the school district doing now. Parents that the one thing about Fortnite, of course, this sounds like the same thing of, well, my kid played Doom, and so now he's going to be a violent criminal going out and shooting up people or something like that. It's like, no, not exactly.
But there is addiction. Clearly there are kids who are addicted. I mean, we're dealing with a minor situation in my family of a child who keeps getting around my best efforts to put up walls using screen time and stuff. But I also, I know that at some point this child is not going to be living in my home and needs to be able to deal with this stuff on their own and be able to manage their own use of stuff. So there's a tension there, but there is these things really draw you in. They really have this pull on you. And as a parent, we have to help them learn. But if my kid is having trouble eating and sleeping because they're playing Fortnite at all hours, well, you're going to be darn sure I'm going to set up my router to block every IP address that goes to the Fortnite servers. I mean, or pay someone to do it if I don't know how to do it myself.
It is funny, though, of course, we never had the chance. The three of us never had the chance to get addicted to like a video game or anything like that. Because if you sit here playing video games too much, and if your parents were like mine, mom would say, go out and play.
She'd pull the plug on the computer.
Yeah.
Yeah, I remember I was up till all hours because we had a 1200 baud modem, and I would call my friend William and we'd play on the Commodore 64 this game called Modem Wars. Yeah, and it would be like 3 or 4 in the morning because we'd lose track of time. And it was like football with like a little robot. And then all of a sudden, like, my parents would pick up the phone and go like, Victor, what's going on? And I'd be like, oh no. And it would like disconnect us, and I'd get in so much trouble for that.
I mean, when I was in college, I remember there was one semester, the end of the semester for finals, instead of studying, I was playing Marathon, by Bungie.
Yeah.
And I'd go to sleep and I'd see the textures on my inside of my eyelids, for the textures from the game. I'm like, maybe I should be studying instead of playing this game. Yeah. I mean, but if it's not that, it's something else, I mean, it's when it comes down to it, there is a certain amount of responsibility that, if they're intentionally designing these products to addict, that would be one thing. Yes. And frankly, I don't trust TikTok as far as I can throw it. Honestly, I've said that before. And Instagram and Facebook the same way. I feel like there's enough out there to tell us that there is evidence, and we've talked about this one in relation to that documentary we discussed a while ago.
Yep. The Social Dilemma.
The Social Dilemma, that there is evidence that they are making these things intentionally addictive, intentionally difficult for us to let go. And young people are more susceptible because they're developmentally not as developed. And so Yeah, there is some responsibility, but I think there's also responsibility on the parental side. But I don't think the school district should be involved, though. That's my opinion.
No. Well, and I wonder if, like Fortnite, if they could add parental controls of some sort or another, where parents can create just a parent account affiliated with their kids, and like you get 2 hours a day. That's it.
Well,
yeah. We have parental controls on Fortnite here. When it first came out on Switch, I was sitting with the family. I was like, hey guys, let's try Fortnite. So I loaded it to my Switch and I was playing it on the big TV with the kids. And I was like, hey, I'm running around. And then some 8-year-old like with pickaxe came up and like murdered me in a bathtub or something. And my wife looked at me and said, you're deleting this and it will never be played in this house again. And I was like,
that works.
Yeah, parental controls. There we go.
Delete it.
Yeah.
Yes.
Yeah.
There is always the old take the phone away for an hour or two and go do something else.
Yeah.
Or the Switch or whatever,
Right. The problem is how much like schoolwork depends on the same devices that they can play games on and stream videos on. And that's been the area. I've said it before, there's a huge hole, like a technological hole that inside Google Docs, you can access the internet. So,
that's what you're saying. Yeah.
Yeah. So Apple, Google needs to get on that. And maybe I should be, contacting somebody, filing a bug report or something. But that totally gets around the screen time controls that Apple has. That's a bad hole because, my child needs to do schoolwork in Google Docs. We can't block that. So, but apparently Fortnite does. Parents can receive playtime reports that track the amount of time their child is playing. So, but you got to know it's there, I would assume.
Yeah. I mean, if they are playing on the Switch, you can set up parental controls on the Switch and set time boundaries and all that stuff. That's there right, too. Yep. But yeah, I mean, be intentional about what devices you're handing off to your kids. I mean, I wouldn't hand, our 10-year-old a smartphone and say, go nuts, even though I trust him, he's a good kid and stuff. But, you do have to be intentional about what you're putting into their hands. And to that extent, like old, Wii's, Wii U's, Nintendo 3DS's, those are still a lot of fun to play, but you're not going to be, they're not so much fun to play that you're going to stay up till 3 and play on them, and you're not going to be accessing the internet.
You also have the thing is they can't play with their friends and stuff like that. And that's a big issue for a lot of those type of Fortnite, those type of games.
Roblox and all that. That Roblox is a big one. Yeah.
Minecraft. That's another one.
Oh yeah.
That my kids have discovered.
I won't say there aren't nights that I've closed my eyes and see Minecraft blocks floating around, but
like I said, it's just the thing that still happens. I mean, I played Civ 6 for hours and hours at a time. I mean, but I'm a grown up and I know it's time to go to bed or time to go do my work or whatever, that sort of thing. All right, so let's talk about our last headline. We talked once before about this city concept by this Saudi Arabian prince called The Line. And I first saw this as a Facebook or social media meme. And I thought it was just a concept idea that someone come up with it's this city that is just basically in a wall, a 170 kilometer long, half kilometer high wall that's just 200 meters wide. And, everything you'll ever need will be inside the wall: shops, living, schools, all that other stuff. We talked about this before and whether it's even plausible or we'd rather want to live there. Well, apparently they're building it. According to this article, this project is well underway. They've dug, what did they say? About 26 million cubic meters of earth and rock in the Saudi Arabian desert so far. And this article in the MIT Technology Review has some satellite images of what's going on so far. And there's some question about whether this is even going to be a practical thing. Will it, it's supposed to be zero carbon emissions, zero footprint. Sort of, that's the idea. And some people say, you're in a desert, you're going to have to ship things in, and it's all this. What do y'all think of this? Just the latest developments, but also the concept.
I think they're going to build a wall. It's going to be a great wall. I don't personally get it. I don't know who would want to live there. I know that the vast majority of the workforce, that would be living there is probably, come into the country, from outside the country. So maybe it'll create jobs in some respect there. It's not for me, but I mean, if people want to live inside of a wall, I guess that's.
I mean, it's a planned community essentially, right?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, those always do really well.
Yeah. As well, Saudi Arabia obviously has money, and they know, and who knows, maybe they're thinking that this is going to put people that there might be less desirable. I don't know. Because it sounds like when you read the descriptions of it, it's supposed to actually be fairly, upscale, but you never know. I mean, really.
I mean, they say up to 9 million people will be able to live in it, which is kind of fascinating. I mean, the idea is to decrease the footprint, right? Instead of sprawling out everywhere, it confines the footprint. But there's a lot of things that have to happen for this to work. They have to have better energy production, electricity production from solar. They have to have better desalinization for water, from the ocean to provide enough water and all these sorts of things. And we talked about last time, like, will there be churches in this sort of place? Will there be family size caps? Like, will there be housing that would fit a large family? There are a lot of like even just societal questions that come up for this sort of planned city of the future. Is it a human thing? Is it a human-sized project in a sense? That's a big question.
Yeah, I've seen YouTube videos where people it's mental exercises like what size cube, like what's the minimum size cube that could house like every person on Earth,
right?
And sustain them and stuff. And yeah, it sounds like a nightmare, but
I mean, you're talking about a structure that's 200 meters wide.
Right.
That's 600 feet wide.
Right. Couple football
roughly.
Fields. Yeah.
Yeah. Because a meter is roughly a yard, give or take a little bit. So, I mean, that gives you kind of an easy. That's not very wide if you're going to have, say, a couple of apartments. Right. If you really think about it, plus hallway, plus other infrastructure, plus everything else you're going to need. So I don't know. I don't know what they're planning. It's kind of funny though. You talk about public works projects in the Saudi government. I spent 5 months in one, thanks to the U.S. Air Force. The story of this base that I was on, it was a permanent buildings, permanent housing. It was built for the Bedouin tribes, and the Bedouin tribes went, there's no place for our camels. No thanks. Gone. So then the U.S. Air Force got it instead.
Oh, funny.
So I don't know. Maybe will end up being a military base. No.
Yeah. Yeah, I know that would be an interesting military base. Yeah, it's kind of I mean, it's a fascinating mental exercise, but it seems I don't know. It just seems there's a whole nother part of the story too, which is about the satellite imagery being suppressed. The high resolution satellite imagery is usually available. But it wasn't for this until they did a special, purchase of a satellite flyby mission. And was the Saudi government suppressing the imagery, like buying exclusive rights to it? Whereas some of the satellite companies said, like, no, it's the middle of the desert. We don't do high res imagery there usually, unless someone, pays for it. But, we usually take high res imagery of things that people want to see close up. So
this is really where they're putting the Stargate, and this is where all the aliens who are coming from the Stargate project are going.
It's a huge mass driver, and they're going to blow up the moon or something. It's a huge railgun.
It's a landing strip. I'm telling you, it's a landing strip for alien spacecraft. All right. So that's enough of that one. So let's move on to our picks of the week. And Victor, I'm going to let you go first with your pick of the week.
Yeah. So I got a 3D printer recently, and then I got a second 3D printer. And the second one is pretty nice, but it doesn't have any sort of, Wi-Fi connectivity to it. So what people do is they grab a Raspberry Pi, they put this software called Octoprint onto it, hook it up to the printer, and then from your laptop, you can send files to it. You can monitor the print. You can hook up a webcam to see how things are going, so you're not running up and down the stairs to check on things. The only problem is there aren't a lot of Raspberry Pis to be had these days. They've become very scarce and very costly as the Raspberry Pi Foundation has kind of, during the chip switched their focus more, chip shortage, switched their focus more towards industrial control systems and that sort of thing. Fortunately, the good thing about Raspberry Pis is if you have some lying around from another project, you can repurpose them. So I took the one that had been in kind of my home arcade machine that was running Laka or, RetroArch, and that became the print server for the 3D printer. Only now I don't have anything in my home arcade machine. So one alternative that I've seen people mention is to take a refurbished thin client PC. So these are very small PCs, about the size of a paperback book even. And so I went on eBay, picked up a Lenovo ThinkCentre M900 with it's a couple years old, Core i7. It has 8 gigabytes of RAM, 256 gigabyte solid state drive for about $140. All the USB ports, built-in Wi-Fi, comes with Windows 10 Pro on it, which usually runs about $140 in itself. And for another $25, put another 8 gigabytes into it. So I have a pretty, decently spec'd, little tiny PC in a box that I can then use for my home arcade machine, or, just as a family PC for the kids to do their homework on. Even though we have other computers in other rooms, it's always good to have one kind of in a central location so you can keep an eye on them too. So, I mean, even when Raspberry Pi 4s were available, you couldn't get one, a case, a power supply, and all the trimmings for 140. So I was a little leery about buying refurbished, but it comes with a 1-year warranty, and so far it's been working out great. The first one I got, and second one's on the way, just because it's definitely very nice for the money.
Very
nice.
Very cool. Great idea. Yeah, I mean, I've got a Raspberry Pi here, and if it ever went down, I'm using it for my home automation. If it went down, I'd be a little worried about trying to replace it at this point.
Yeah. I'll have to look at this too, because I've got an old arcade cabinet, the old wood cabinet for Moon Patrol game, and I've been thinking about Raspberry Pi, but I might have to do this instead. Just got to get a good monitor to put in there. Yeah.
I mean, it's perfectly quiet, this thing, so it'd be good for home automation, but you can install any kind of environment onto it within Windows 10 that you want. So it is a good, suitable replacement for anything like that. And
I assume it's a standard PC type platform, so you could install more than just Windows.
Yeah, definitely. Yeah.
Cool. Excellent. Very good. Father Cory, what's yours? Pick of the week.
So I've, of course, I've talked before about my Hackintosh. You can go back and listen to and I'm still using it. That's what I'm using for doing all my recording and everything. So it's great. But I have a early 2005 MacBook Pro that is no longer supported officially by Apple for the latest versions of macOS as of Ventura. Well, the same software that I use to run my Hackintosh also allows older Macs to run newer macOS. So I now have Ventura 13.1 running on that MacBook Pro. And the software is called Open Core Legacy Patcher. And what you do is you can run it on the system itself. It'll help you create a USB key, or USB thumb drive with the macOS install and the Open Core Patcher and everything. Set it up for your exact hardware. Of course, it's easier with Mac hardware because you've got only so many versions of Mac hardware to support.
Right.
So they know exact hardware, everything that Apple put on there, they know it. And so they can patch it. And you can take systems as old as 2007 and run like Big Sur on it, which wasn't that long ago. So, and they keep working on it. They keep trying to figure out what changed so that they can patch it so that the newer versions will run. So I think like my 2009 iMac I have sitting here behind me, I think this will run Monterey. It won't run Ventura yet, but they're working on it. They're close. Stuff like that, and so it makes it really easy. It's step by you follow the instructions. The instructions in the Open Core project are amazing. And so for this, it's do this, follow this step, reboot the machine, do this. And you can do an upgrade. That's how I did it. I didn't have to completely wipe the drive, just upgrade to Ventura. So if you've got an older Mac that's just out of support by Apple, take a look at this, because your Mac is probably powerful enough to run these versions. It's just Apple doesn't support something inside of it.
Right.
And they patch it so it will. So
2005. I mean, whether you want to run Ventura on anything now is a whole nother question. Yeah. As I call it, I don't even know if I want to run it on my Mac Studio, because I call it Mac OS Vista. It's just so buggy. But that's great. It's awesome. I've got a couple of old iMacs here, and I'm not doing anything with them. If I could, get them on a newer operating system, I could maybe even find someone who needs a Mac and give it to them.
Yeah. And it will help with some of the e-waste problems. Let's put it that way. It can bring new life because, of course, with the newer versions, if you're within, was it the last 2 or 3 versions, they still do security updates.
Yeah, that's right.
And so you can get a Mac that hasn't had security updates in a few years up to at least a version where you get another year or 2 of security. So that's a very good thing too. But it helps with the e-waste. That's the biggest thing, is you're not throwing out a perfectly good Macintosh.
Right. And it's free. Excellent.
Yep.
So my pick this week is an update of something I talked about once before. So Thermacell is this great new tech. It's a brand, but they make mosquito repellent, technological mosquito repellent little machines. Now, the first one I had was this little cylinder, and it has a liquid fuel canister that goes in the bottom, and it has these little fabric patches that goes on the top, and basically the fuel burns, heats up the patch, which releases a mosquito repellent. It's not citronella. That's whatever new formula that the chemical that they've invented that is apparently, it seems to be much more effective. Frankly, I've noticed it. I take it camping and that sort of thing. Now, I've used it here at home. I've used it when I'm out camping, but it's got these canisters and all that sort of stuff. So they come up with a new one called the E series, or when I got it was called the Thermacell Live. I guess they've changed it. And what this is it's got a battery which you charge with USB, and these little self-contained like fuel and the fabric impregnated with the chemical, all contained in this little fuel cell that drops right in the middle. And so then you can turn it on with the push of a button, and it will start working. And I use it all the time now on my patio in the summer. I mean, right now I'm not using it, but it has like a 5.5 hour battery life. The cartridges last a long time. I think I'm still on the original cartridge. I used it all summer. Wow. So I may not have used it as much as some other people, but they last a long time. Let's see, it has a 12-hour refill cartridge.
Wow.
Yeah, I guess I must have swapped one out at least once. But I've got a couple of them. It gives you a 20-foot zone of protection, it says. And so I have, a couple different places in the yard. And they are really effective. It's kind of amazing and it's not DEET. It's not anything like that. I think they even make one that you can wear, so that you can, if you're out hiking, you can carry your zone of protection with you while you're out in the wilderness. So check it out.
Ooh, I'm going to have to get one of these and test it out against Montana mosquitoes if it'll protect from them, anything. And I was looking on the question and answer section. The ingredient that they use is called metofluorethan.
Okay. Interesting.
So it's not citronella. It's not DEET. If you're familiar with DEET from off bug spray or citronella candles or such, it's not that. But I'll have to get one of these and try it out here in Mosquito, Montana, where you can't, half the summer you can't go outside after dark because you'll just get carried away literally by the mosquitoes.
If they don't carry the Thermacell away, it's probably working.
Yeah, I've got a nice patio out front that would be perfect for this.
Yeah, they make even bigger ones too that you plug in that are more permanent installations, so that cover a wider area and last longer. So they have a whole range of these. So these are really nice.
Yeah, I wonder if you could just buy the chemical like in bulk, because really all the devices is just a heater, right? So you could probably make your own or something.
You can. I saw something here where you can actually get Amazon, like for older units, you can get refills.
You just need to burn it at the right rate, I think, is the key. You don't want it, you don't want to burn it too fast, too slow. Yeah. So I think that's a part of what the product is doing. But give it a try if you're willing to try it out and hot wire it, do a little redneck engineering. That would be probably worthwhile. Excellent. So that does it for our picks of the week. We'd like to ask you to send in your thoughts. What do you think of any of our discussion with our farmer friend, Matt Clark, and anything else we discussed today? You can let us know by commenting on the show at sqpn.com/technology or the StarQuest Facebook page, facebook.com/StarQuestMedia. Send an email to technology@sqpn.com. visit the StarQuest Discord community at sqpn.com/Discord and say hi to Matt. His handle there is Regulus, like Legolas, but with an R, and ask him some of your own farming tech questions. I'm sure he'd be happy to have a conversation with you on that. You can find links from our discussion and picks of the week on our show notes at sqpn.com. And if we would love for you to write a review in Apple Podcasts or wherever you can write any reviews or give ratings. That helps us a lot when you review or rate the show and share it with your friends to help us grow this community. We'd like to thank James for research assistance in this episode. And until next time, Victor Lambs, thank you for joining me and sharing the secrets of technology.
Thanks, Tom.
Father Cory Sticha, thank you as well.
Thank you, Dom.
And of course, another thank you to our special guest, Matthew Clark. And once again, I'm Dom Bettinelli. Thank you for listening to the Secrets of Technology on StarQuest.